Let's get to Backlash. Shelton Benjamin is going to be in the opening match here with the Nature Boy Ric Flair, and they're going to go 9 minutes and 31 seconds. Wade would say it's a chop fest, with Flair getting a big dose of cheers from the crowd. In the end, as Flair turned his back and pulled out a foreign object, Benjamin splashed him from behind and then clotheslined him and scored the pin. Neither Flair's age nor Benjamin's inexperience left either seeming out of place. Both could be happy with their performances. 2.25 stars. I thought it was a good match. Great opening match for the pay-per-view. Wade liked it too, but he only gave it 2.25 stars. You saw it this week for the first time in 15 years. What'd you think?
Well, I just look at it and I'm always amazed by how Ric Flair could go. And Rick, I think people thought Rick was 100 years old, 30 years ago, and he moved like a cat. And to see Rick, and Rick was hanging with, a young guy like Shelton Benjamin from Minnesota. Rick's from Minnesota. I think that Rick, that's where he excelled. He loved working with amateurs. People forget what an incredible athlete Ric Flair was before he even became a wrestler. He was a football player. He was trained by Vern Gagne, all this shit. And yes, people think he's the greatest in the world, but I think that they take it for granted sometimes at how good he was at making other talent and really making people special. And this is a great case and a great display with Shelton Benjamin. Shelton's great. Shelton's awesome. But Ric Flair made him look like he belonged in the ring with the top guys in the world.
Next up, or I guess we should mention a few weeks prior to this, Shelton had pinned Triple H clean on Raw, and here he pins Ric Flair. Of course, Rick is at the time here, one half of the tag team champions with Batista. Evolution is still running roughshod. So you guys are obviously feeling like you're gonna, have some upside with Shelton Benjamin, getting a win over Triple H, now getting a win over Ric Flair. But he doesn't really wrestle a lot of singles matches when he's on SmackDown and he's a part of the world's greatest tag team with Charlie Haas. And you wind up not really strapping the rocket to him. Even after he beat Triple H, even after he beat Ric Flair, what was it that kept Shelton Benjamin from really getting a full vote of confidence from the company's creative?
I think more than anything, it was the ability to connect with the audience verbally. And Shelton's one of those guys, one of the most entertaining people in the back. However, he tries to become a character when it's time to speak. In the ring, very few guys that can touch Shelton Benjamin with his in-ring work. But there was just a disconnect, in my opinion, with the audience that kept him from ever getting over to the next level. Watch him work. I can watch him work all day long. He's amazing. And one of the toughest sumbitches in the, on the roster. People forget that too. But there's just that connection factor to me was the one thing that kind of just held him back at that point. You could get so far and then it just kind of stalled out.
Shelton Benjamin, one of my low key favorites from back in the day. And I kind of hoped he would have had a bigger run on top and maybe had a shot at the title, headlined some pay-per-views, but it wasn't to be. But he had some pretty memorable moments on the show over the years. That super kick with Shawn Michaels is still something that they show on replay every now and again. Just a phenomenal, underrated performer. Maybe he doesn't get his just due. Let's talk about Todd Grisham, man. We haven't talked about Grisham a ton here on the show, but we see him here interviewing Randy Orton, and Orton says, he's the longest reigning IC champ in 7 years, and he's going to earn the respect of Foley tonight. But he also says he's going to retire Foley because he's not scared of him, and he's going to treat him like the old, sad, toothless dog he is, and he's going to put him out of his misery tonight. And they're, of course, talking about a hardcore match later in the show with him and Foley for the Intercontinental title. Pretty good program for Randy Orton, one that certainly got my attention. But before we talk about that, and it's not time to talk about the match yet, let's talk about Todd Grisham, a name we don't talk about a ton here on the show.
I don't even know where the hell Grisham came from. And he's doing soccer. He's doing a lot of different things right now. He's with ESPN, right?
Yep. No, wait, no, I don't think he is anymore. I think he maybe has just left there. I could be wrong.
Yeah, but I thought that Todd Grisham was, when you're talking about people underrated like Shelton Benjamin, Todd was another one that was underrated. And Todd was a great play-by-play guy and also doing interviews, what have you. But he was kind of nondescript, but just very, which is good for an interviewer. But he had a tremendous wit and was very, very good. He was a student of the game, did his homework, and always came prepared and was ready to go on a moment's notice. Was one of those talent that you never had a problem going live with, that you had confidence in. And I was so happy for Todd when Todd got the gig. He loved soccer, and to be able to move on and expand his career. And every once in a while, I will speak to him on Twitter or what have you, and just kind of go back and forth. But that's one of those success stories you look at that has gone on beyond the WWE and made a name for himself and is a damn good commentator.
I think these days he's doing stuff with Glory and UFC. He wrapped it up with ESPN in 2016, but maybe one of the more, underrated performers on the show. It feels like, Michael Cole's been there forever, but the Todd Pettengills and the Todd Grishams, they've sort of come and gone, but I always thought Todd did a pretty good job here. What'd you think of this promo with Randy Orton? I love the program with Mick Foley. I felt like it added a level of badassery. That's not a word, but I just made it up for Randy Orton. And I dug it. What'd you think of this promo in particular, though?
Well, it's just how young Randy was. It's like, holy shit. And you still, when you compare it to today, you look at Randy and go, God damn, he was still green, but he still had that air of confidence and that air of cockiness that has made Randy's entire career. And it's a self-assuredness that even then he had. You strip him down, everything else, he still had that air of confidence and just, okay, I can go with anybody. And he believes it because he can.
Next up, we've got an interesting matchup. I can't believe this is real. Jonathan Coachman pins Tajiri in 6 minutes and 22 seconds. That's right. Coach, a fucking commentator, beat Tajiri, an active wrestler. Now, he did have some help from the outside. Garrison Cade manages to knock out Tajiri. That allows Coach to schoolboy him. But still, Coach in a match on pay-per-view against Tajiri. Bruce, who booked this shit?
Are you upset it wasn't in the main event?
My God. Well, I mean, what's next? We got Super Crazy and Michael Cole.
Yeah, actually. Coach was never, ever, Coach wasn't a wrestler. Coach didn't want to wrestle, but he kept getting himself into these situations where it was like people wanted to see Coach get his ass kicked. And it can go all the way back to his interviews with The Rock and some of those different things where Coach was so good and had just exudes personality that when he would sometimes say shit, people go, fuck him, man. And he had heat. Coach had heat, legitimate fucking heat that was hard to get on heels back in that day and time. But he was able to do it where people really wanted to see him get his ass kicked. He trained, he busted his ass. He learned what he could learn. He would get to the buildings early and get in the ring and learn what he could learn to get through matches. To his credit, he was an athlete and he was able to pull it off. But he was a character. He was a character that was on TV every week. People could relate to him and they hated his guts. So Vince just kept putting him in situations where you want to see him get his ass kicked. And then at the right time, let him get some heat. Let him beat somebody where he shouldn't. He shouldn't beat Tajiri. Shouldn't be in the ring. But not only is he in the ring, he actually comes out the victor. And that's where the heat came from. And I love Coach, especially heel Coach in this day and time, because no one would call it and people were pissed off. You shouldn't do it, but they would sit there and tune in to watch him get his ass kicked. It's like the guy that says, I don't watch wrestling anymore. I stopped watching that 10 minutes ago. But by God, the other night when that Seth Rollins, and it was like, I thought you didn't watch. Well, I saw that.